as well.
Okay, Coke. Thank you very much, Chris. David, fire yourself off.
Thanks, Pete. Hi, David Stocks. I am from my sins a sort of business transformation consultant, somewhat specialising, probably because that's just where the business seems to be going at the moment, in cloud transformation for probably the past 10 years or so. I work for myself, but at the moment I'm doing some business with Fujitsu, who are doing a lot of stuff in central and local government, particularly around Oracle ERP cloud migrations. So, you know, the winter nights fly by, trust me.
Super. I can imagine they do. So I think today's subject's going to be, which I think you're both right up there in these industries, cloud and where it's going. Mm-hmm. So we are going to talk about infrastructure, platform, and into the software. Yeah, the old ISP type model, as I call it. Yeah, and the software, which is really moving, and where you see it going, and how you see people succeeding and failing. Yeah, and also, which we see a lot of, and we talk a lot of, is it on how people actually procure stuff, whether that is cloud, whether that is major infrastructure or whatever. What are the trends here? What's going on? What do people do well, and what don't they do well? So I think we've got the exact right people here. And from my side, got an IT company, yeah, or whatever you want to call this, reseller, partner, whatever you like to call this, I don't mind. We supply cloud. We do cloud. It moves into the cloud. We do moves out of the cloud. Yeah, people purchase a lot of things from us in lots and lots of different ways. Some I see it as 1980s sort of ways, and some are really quite forward thinking. So it's refreshing when you talk to people at the procurement side who are looking at it in that new way. So I'm going to come to you first, David. I'm going to bring in the cloud side. I'm going to go through how you are really with the current situation. You know, with the current COVID situation, it's been now 7 or 8 months.
I'm doing
how are you finding it? What's the change?
Yeah, thanks, Pete. Yeah, not too bad, actually. Yeah, okay. I think I'm at the moment quite hot under the lights. I've gone for a double angle poised lamp set up here just to try and get some light. The lighting is poor in here, so a little hot under the lights, but otherwise generally good. Yeah, lockdown's been all right, actually. It's been kind to me, I think. I've managed to avoid too many cakes. Yeah, so far so good. I mean, like anyone, difficult to get away from the desk, isn't it? Especially when you use the desk to sometimes hide from household responsibilities. That can backfire. So doing my best now to try and get out and about a bit more balance. But doing well, thanks, mate.
Good. What about yourself, Chris?
Yeah, I've been this lockdown. Well, the first lockdown was actually quite a pleasant experience for me and my family. I got to spend time with my young lads, and it was nice weather as well. So we sort of got to make the most of that family time. I think this second lockdown, I'll probably speak for a lot of people, is a lot more challenging. I think shorter days, worse weather, and I think the novelty's kind of worn off for a lot of people now. We're hitting sort of 7, 8 months not being in the office, speaking with people virtually, and while you can sort of get by and deal with it, I think it's never the same. And I guess from your side of the business as well, Pete, speaking with customers and things like that, nothing beats talking to people face to face, and I'm in a position where I'm kind of looking forward to that now.
Yeah, absolutely with you on that, Chris, because first time it was a novelty. The weather was nice, you know, it was the middle of March and we had a lovely spring. We could go out and do Joe Wicks in the garden, a little bit jumping around with the kids. It was good. Come back, do some work. And it was a bit different. You're thinking, oh, this is, I don't think exciting is the word, because a lot of people have lost their jobs, not had any money coming in, lost their houses. So for us to say, oh, great, how exciting it was, is probably the wrong thing to do. But this one here is totally different. You're absolutely right. The lights are coming in. They should have almost stopped the clocks going back. Yeah. They should have kept them there, because that was had an impact on me, I tell you. And it's not so enjoyable. And I'm finding different rooms in the house to work in. There's only a certain number. I don't live in a palace, and it has impacted me.
It's nice I think moving to the West Wing, sort of Mondays to Wednesday.
I should have, yeah. But that's where the staff are. Yeah.
Good point.
But so I don't want to push them out into the garden.
No.
But it's, I mean, fortunately, business-wise, that's taken a lot of stress off us, because the business has gone very, very well, and really expanded. But the new members of staff we've taken on, I think that's difficult because, especially the younger ones, where they would usually hear other members, more senior people chatting, talking to clients. They don't learn that. They don't hear what's going on in the rest of the business. You have to, every meeting, you've got a call every day and they hear you and chat, but they don't learn apart from their own role. So they're getting very proficient at their own roles.
Can you? You should record some of those client engagements so they can watch for training purposes.
Yeah, I could do. Yeah, but I haven't really thought. But that's one of the things is training. How we get training out to people is a tough ask.
Yeah,
it's a tough ask. And seeing clients as well. When you're chatting to clients, and a lot of our clients, from my previous business, for 25 years. Yeah. And you go out, you chat. And actually finding out about their businesses and what keeps them awake at night is really important. Means we can help more, or guide, or just chat. You have a Zoom call about something specific, don't you? You don't tend to have a Zoom call as a general chat, especially 5 or 6 people on the call. You don't just suddenly go into chat and how's your kids.
Yeah, no, I fully agree.
And so how are you going to, with Chris, obviously you're in a role where you're similar to us. You're giving services out and you're guiding people. And so how will you be finding that? What do you think that?
I think where it helps is that you're able to have face-to-face conversations with people, albeit without it being present. So, for example, if you're dealing with a customer who's based in Hong Kong or US or overseas, or even in different parts of the UK, that's a lot easier because people are more readily available to have those kind of calls.
Yeah.
Where it becomes a challenge is, as you said, those coffees that you have with people or meet in the city or in London where all of us work. That then becomes a bit of a challenge. But I think on the whole, if this pandemic happened, 3 or 4 years ago, we'd be in a lot worse situation. I think it's kind of helpful in a way that products like Teams and Zoom and a lot of companies, major companies have been sort of rolling those out over the last sort of 24 months that kind of had those products in place, so they could easily just flip over. Bearing in mind there's bandwidth that and things like that they needed to upgrade. But I think if this happened 3 or 4 years ago, I think a lot of businesses would be suffering. And I guess, Pete, the question back to you really is, you said that the business is been okay for you and has been going well. What I've been seeing is that very quickly, there was the immediate panic of lockdown and around March, April time, but very much even into May. And as soon as that, it seems kind of things just go back into BAU and kind of the budget cycles keep going. And as we hit the end of the year, budget cycles are still going through. People are still looking at what's going on in 2021 and trying to plan accordingly for that. And I guess you must be seeing that with your clients as well.
Yeah, very much so. It does seem to be BAU. It's carrying on. People have got used to this. The digital transformation became rapid for some companies. I mean, we had a guy, Frank, on for one of the big London boroughs on FGS TV a couple of months ago. And they were talking about allowing people to work from home in 2 years' time. And every project, he said, in the London boroughs take a year, where in private they might take 4 weeks. He said they did it all in 10 days. And then people who were good could come to the fore.
But do you know why I think a lot of that happened there, Pete? I think I've heard similar stories from central government where they managed to stand up infrastructure really quickly. And I think a lot of that is because they bypassed all their sort of overbearing governance really quickly. So they had the ability to do it. It's the governance that ties them up and sort of makes them sort of lose the will to live. And I think they also probably did, they were able to partner more effectively with other companies quite quickly, again, rather than going through the slog of the procurement slog. No offense, Chris.
Well, actually, what we're seeing now is, to that point, David, a lot of companies did bypass a lot of their governance because of the sheer need and the short space of time. But then as we've come out, into that BAU, they landed with increased costs. So, license costs for collaboration tools that they were never expected to use, or increases in bandwidth because 100% of their workforce is working from home. So we're seeing clients come to us now and say, look, how can we reduce this cost? Because we've had to bypass that, and how can we buy things at pace a bit more quickly as well? So there's two elements there, and I think that's going to be something that happens and continues into 2021 as well.
And the governance side is really key. Look what's happening in government procurement, PPE. Governance it was all about pace. And it looks as though, using a Boris Johnson term, they've spaffed a lot of it up the wall. And so that governance is have to come back in, because that can run away. Yes, it breeds a bit of innovation, but you do need some sort of governance to ensure that you can control your costs and what you're doing as a business. And then your information security governance comes in. That just all went out. You just think how much money people have spent on your big printing systems in the office. The security of it, you could only get the stuff off the printer if you had your card and you put it on there, printed your bit off. So, but actually now you're printing it all off at home. You could be in a shared house working. So all of that information security went out the window. So that's something.
Well, printing's print is actually one of those contracts that's been massively impacted by coronavirus, because you've got no one in offices. So obviously the click rate of printers, it's all dependent on click rate, and you can go. People have gone from 5% of what they were using, and I don't think it looks likely that most people are going to be back in the office full time anytime soon. So, and also print is one of those contracts that people have in place for 5 years, possibly even longer, just because it's usually quite fixed and stable, and that's where the discounts are. So I'm seeing lots of people trying to renegotiate mid-contract for these printer contracts now as well. And certainly printing and utilities are ones that have been massively impacted, and also the security reasons as well, Pete. For most financial institutions and places like that, people can't print at home, so there's no chance that a printer is going to be used anytime soon. It's
a totally different way of working. I'm fortunate I can do these things, and I've been into the office a bit. I say a bit, every 3 weeks I won't go to the office, but really it's for change of scenery.
Yeah, exactly.
It really is.
Can I ask you guys a question? So we talk about Teams. So everyone's jumped onto Teams now, and I think people generally quite like Teams. The Microsoft product's pretty good. The Zoom's the poster child, isn't the lockdown poster child of video chat. And I personally do like Teams. Real problem I have with Teams is collaborating across different organizations. And just a genuine question, how do you get people collaborating, beyond their own enterprise and across other organizations? If you guys have any ideas, I'd love to hear about it, because it's a constant problem.
With difficulty? I mean, I'd like to come out with a good answer, but I'm going to struggle.
I didn't think there was one particularly, but I thought it was worth asking. But I mean, I didn't think. It's a bit of a nightmare, isn't it?
I don't think we've settled on a standard yet, though, have we? I think because there's still a proliferation. So, I can speak from organisations that predominantly use Zoom, and the functionality and the availability of Teams is locked down. You can't use it. So if someone sends an invite through for Teams externally, you can't use it. So, I think we're probably in our infancy just regarding full collaboration across different organisations, because it depends on what people are using. But I'm sure some clever clog somewhere has probably developed a plugin, or there's ways to go across that. But I'll be perfectly honest, David. It's not something I've majorly experienced when it comes to Teams, and it's not something I've had a major issue with. I'm a recent user to Teams, but I've been able to use it with quite a few organisations now.
I think it's on the call side. Yeah, you get the odd glitch with the call side. I was thinking more as well when you look beyond that and you want to share sort of files or share a Kanban board or something to around more maybe project delivery collaboration and stuff. I think that's a real problem.
Internally, it's quite easy, but going external is difficult.
Yes.
So when you were saying about standards there, Chris, I contacted one of the guys in the office today, and I just thought, I've phoned you up, I've also teams done you on called you on Teams, and I've also called you on Zoom.
Mm.
For no apparent reason, I'll do all three. So we've not standardised. We use all three. We pay for all three, and it's just what you feel like it. You know,
if I speak to Chris about some rationalisation of your collaboration tools, Pete, I think.
maybe we should do. Yeah. So I just think it's going to be fascinating. It pans out, and also things like I know I brought this up before, and I'm going to bore people, but the house market.
Mm.
Why would you want to spend £1 million buying, a terraced house on the North Circular?
Mm.
Yeah, down at Harlesden Way or wherever.
Yeah.
Or you could spend 500,000 on a house down in Gloucester, and you can commute once every 3 weeks because that's the only times you're going to go to the office, or Cornwall, or or the Lake District. So it means that you could, as long as there's broadband, fast Wi-Fi, you can work anywhere now.
It's true, as long as you get over the shock of no Uber and Deliveroo, which can be an issue, Pete. But point very much taken.
I'd suggest that's a bit of a first world issues. Yeah.
Pete, I've actually got a question for you. So, cloud. So when we talk about cloud, we've had this similar conversations in the past, in the office, of course, never in the pub, around cloud. And I'm always very much at cloud. Everyone's moving to cloud. There is nothing but cloud. And you are like, what are you talking about? It's on-prem, it's hybrid, it's not all about cloud. How very naive. And then I wondered, does it get into a bit of a misunderstanding around everyone thinks of cloud in different ways? So when I think cloud, I think I'm talking software as a service and a bit of platform as a service to paper over some of the cracks, especially when you're doing a sort of more of an adopt rather than adapt type world. Are you talking more infrastructure as a service? And what's the difference between those things?
Well, I think there's a vast difference. So this is where people took hybrid, use cloud where it's best. And so the old ISP stuff that we talked about 15 years ago, Salesforce, things like this, they're in the cloud. Why would you do anything else? Yeah. It's sort of madness to try and do it internally. There's no reason to, not madness, but there could be cost reasons or whatever.
Yeah.
Or the products you're using that you might have developed in-house might not work very well out there. And so we're seeing more Office 365. Why wouldn't you? Salesforce. Why wouldn't you? You get a new HR system. Why wouldn't you? Yeah. Unless there's a compliance reason. But I think people need to. They put this word cloud out, and that's infrastructure as a service. That is, PaaS. That's all sorts of things. It's not quite. They're all different. Yeah. So the software as a service, absolutely. That's part of cloud. Infrastructure as a service, we're seeing more infrastructure coming back out than going in. Everyone just had this thing a few years ago, and to an extent now, where the board said, "Oh, got to go cloud." Didn't really know, and the cost of infrastructure in the cloud is colossal. We had one client; it's quite high profile that we've done it because we've done some big case studies with it, and it went global. The case studies where the client, for just one of their database servers, this is in the gaming industry, they were paying €47,000 a month. That sort of figure,
Lively, yeah.
We have pulled them out of the cloud almost the entirety. Their payback period was under 4 months.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and the performance gains have been massive. People have to remember, with infrastructure as a cloud, Microsoft or Amazon or whatever, still got to buy this kit. Still got to be in a data center. They've still got to have somebody looking after it. Yeah, they've still got to have someone managing it, and you've got to pay for their marketing. You've got to pay for the company. It's not free. They're not magic. They don't magic these things. This cloud stuff. What's that?
I think it's more convenient then, but not more cost effective.
I think it's more tricky. More difficult for a lot of people. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. People don't know how to use Azure properly. They don't know how to use AWS properly. You have to get trained up to use it, because you get a lot of our clients, they've got these masters in Azure. They're Azure this or whatever. Well, before they were, master ASCs for HPE. They knew how to do that. But now they're having to utilize how to use Azure. So they've still got to have the same number of staff. They're not, we'll get rid of all our staff. Our infrastructure stuff, it doesn't happen. They've still got to look after it. They just look after it. It's just like a colo, really, for me.
Yeah.
But yes, you can burst in, you can burst out. That's your great thing. And you can spin things up like that. You haven't got to wait. Some people wait 12 weeks for stuff. You haven't got to go through that procurement cycle.
Yeah.
So it's more difficult to do procurement in the other way, but the cost benefits on infrastructure we're seeing is colossal. Especially if you had a big database stuff and things like that, elastic searches, those sort of things. It doesn't fit out there. That's why hybrid, people talk hybrid.
Right, to give you the burst when you need it. Yeah.
One thing I'm seeing, because I think, Pete, I'm seeing the same as well. The initial statement that cloud is first and cloud fixes everything, I think that was true 3 or 4 years ago. Well, could even argue if it was true then. But what we're seeing now is that obviously the type of data that goes to cloud has to be classified first, and that kind of drives the decision. If you've got legacy infrastructure, so if you've got legacy storage infrastructure, it could take how long? You might not be able to classify that data, so you don't know what can be migrated up. And then also a cost mechanism as well, that cloud traditionally is more of a challenge to forecast and predict. And from a cost management point of view is possibly less stable, or could be argued it's less stable and less predictable. But what we're seeing is across the infrastructure really is the convergence of it. So the hyper converged products. So traditionally you'd have a storage team and a networks team, and a front desk or end user and a kind of server.
My house phone never goes off, so I can
Unbelievable.
carry on talking. I'm going to put myself on mute, guys.
It's usually as a service, like a server infrastructure team, and then what happens is they live in their silos and they never talk. With the kind of rise of on-prem hyperconverged infrastructure, you can get a kind of a cloud-like experience. And I think there's various commercial models now. So Pete, obviously you're familiar with HP's GreenLake and things like that, and there are other products as well. I know Dell offer it too, where they can offer that burst and capacity and that flex capacity for on-prem products, and more often than not, it's the same cost or cheaper than what you see with the main cloud providers. So I think it's a choice as well, and I guess it depends on where your infrastructure is starting from. If you've got loads of legacy infrastructure, you can't reasonably expect to go immediately to cloud. But if you're starting from scratch, if you're a new challenger bank, then that's a lot easier to do. And
it is a lot easier.
That could give you the competitive advantage that cloud does bring.
The one we were talking about, and it was way into the 7 figures. They were a startup 9 years ago, so everything had been cloud, and so I totally get it. Why wouldn't they? They're now maturing, and so they're picking and choosing what's right for them in the cloud, and it's easy. And you're absolutely right. So cloud is really as a service. It's which is what GreenLake is. It just happens to be, where is that physical hardware sort of irrelevant. You don't know where it is if it's in the cloud, and you know where it is if it's as a service like GreenLake or PAS with Pure, or how they'll do it. You pay for what you use. You've got it. You've got control of it, and it can be very, very cost effective.
It depends on the attitude as well towards like capex v opex as well. Some companies
very much so.
find opex, can deal with the capex benefits, and I personally believe that if you can outlay the capital cost, then there's benefits there. But if you're not, and then you have to go the full opex model, then that's where cloud kind of benefits as well. So
tell me about capex, right? Sorry, David. Carry on, David.
No, I mean, maybe my coffee's too strong. I was going to get a bit philosophical there about sort of subscription fatigue, in terms of, a lot of people, outside of the business world are starting to think, oh, maybe I should buy vinyl again, not just the hipsters, maybe I want to physically own things rather than, all these subscriptions we have. I just wondered where that business model, Salesforce largely pioneered, will start to be challenged at some point. People just start to get a little bit fed up with almost, all I can think of calling it subscription fatigue.
Well, I think it's here to stay, though. I think there's talks of subscription, cars as a service where you subscribe to cars. That's what we're seeing now. with I guess with electric vehicles and things like that as well. So I think it's a reality that it's something you've got to live with, and there are benefits to it.
Yeah. What about so talking about the capex and opex? Yeah, I see so many companies. I mean, you worked for one, Chris, 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Opex.
Mm-hmm.
Now I own my own business. Yeah. Now it's irrelevant to me. It's still, you're still spending that money and it's going out. Whether you accrue it write it off over 4 years, and it's a capex cost, but it's still over 4 years, so it's in your accounts 25% a year or whatever you do it, or you buy that 25% a year and you pay it. It's sort of, I don't really understand it. So are you going to enlighten me, Chris, of why people are so not obsessed with opex, or is it easy to hide stuff when it's opex? It's not in your budget.
So the fundamentals of it, right, is that the capex, it sits on a balance sheet. So that's where I guess different CFOs, different institutions have a different tolerance. So some organisations might want to reduce down their balance sheet and their liabilities that sit under there, and insist that opex is more valuable to them. Conversely, other organisations, they don't have that concern or philosophy, and capex is useful to them. And I think you've got to remember with capex as well, what period you're depreciated over has to be kind of generally accepted. So I think you see it in your industry, Pete. Standard for a server is about 5 years. If it's a piece of networking equipment, then you could argue that that would have a lifespan of 7 years. So so that and how that is then treated internally kind of would determine the value of capex as well. So the amount of times that I've received back RFP responses, and part of the proposal, it comes back and says, we think you could capitalize this over 8 years. Well, that fundamentally changes the whole business case and outlay if that was possible. But if it's only 7 years and all you can capitalize that and the useful life of that product is 7 years, then that could sway the difference between the commercial costs. So to try and answer your question, Pete, I think it depends on the outlook of the CFO and the business, but fundamentally it's determined by how much do they want to reduce their balance sheet by, or how much are they prepared to load onto that balance sheet. And then with opex as well, it's treated different financially. So if each organisation was to run with opex, then the theory being that cash out the door should then be on an annual basis. So then it becomes a cash flow issue as well. So that's kind of the main drivers as I see it. And if you're able to pay more money up front or release more cash up front to a supplier, then you've always got a bit more leverage there than you have to pay annually via an opex model.
I mean, publicly owned companies, I suppose, opex for short-term share value boost, really, instead of putting large amounts of capital out. But we've seen some. We are still looking after some arrays, talking about capex, that are 13 years old. There's some people listening to this, and they look after them. But we look after them. They're the infrastructure guys in this company. 13 years old, and you'll be shocked at the information that sits on this.
Well, I wouldn't be too shocked.
Runs our country.
I wouldn't be too shocked, because I know that there's systems that are running the banking infrastructure stable, incredibly stable, and impossible, or I can't imagine too many CIOs wanting to sign off a migration away from these products because they are so stable. But agree, similar lifespan, and that's another benefit of capex, right? If you can sweat the asset, it pays for itself, and then it's just pure benefit from straight up from those 5-7 years after its in theory useful life.
So what about yourself, Dave, on your cloud side of it? So you've been working on cloud for 10 years.
I know, yes, like Salesforce pioneer, dare I say, which I found very interesting. I mean, there's so much I see in the cloud stuff. I think that point there about sweating, so I think is valuable. I think you've got to look at the opposite as well, in terms of are you building up, storing up a problem in terms of how then difficult it is to get off that platform 13 years time. One of the good things
Look
about
at the
cloud,
National Police, the Police National Computer is an ICL Fujitsu, I think BS 2000. This is 20 years old or something.
A real workhorse though, Pete, a real workhorse.
Yeah, absolutely. It works. It works. But yeah, but you can't get off it. Sorry, David, I interject.
No.
As I always do.
No, I mean, just to hear that model number alone, I think it was worthwhile. I think
Thank you very much.
No. I think so. One thing about cloud is I think it does force you to sort of keep pace. I mean, that's a pro and a con, isn't it? You've got to have the people around to take advantage of the quarterly releases and all the new stuff that's coming down. So if you're not doing that, okay, that relates to another point around. I think whether you're going on-prem, cloud, or hybrid, and you're making the switch, the biggest piece of advice I think I could give is think about how that changes your operating model, your business operating model, how you might need to change your ways of working to exploit which angle you're going to. Do you have the right people with the right knowledge, skills, and sometimes behaviors, especially in the cloud world, to make the most of that investment? I think that's often overlooked. In my experience, if you're moving one way to the other, you can't continue to operate in the same way with the same processes, same people, same governance, same ways of working, you name it. So I think
every piece of infrastructure, new infrastructure, will change your culture slightly.
Exactly.
Really will. The way you work changes your culture. You've got to have the people who can adapt to it.
Exactly, and I think whether it's hardware, software, whatever. I think we know how powerful software and hardware can be, and how it can automate. It can bring efficiency, effectiveness, kind of things. But I mean, I spent half my life saying to people, don't treat that as the panacea. Don't treat that's all you need to think about. It's just one thing, very important thing.
It is an issue. It's sold as panacea. SAP sold as a panacea. Yeah. We bought NetSuite. Yeah, we've had it in for two years or so. The first year was a year of pain. Absolute pain. People wanted to leave the business. It was the worst thing going. But now we love it. We had to adapt our processes, but also we had to get it changed slightly to come into our culture. But there was real pain. The cultural change, we didn't recognise how much it was going to be. Yeah.
No, fair enough. Good point, well made. I think it's often. Go on, sorry.
No, I didn't say anything.
I've got a question for you, David, actually, on that, because from a commercial side, we like our stakeholders to try and use as much out of the box as possible, because modification. We've all seen programs that have been trying to bend, an SAP or a particular product UI and functionality to that already exists within a business. How much do you think of that is valid, or do you think the majority of cases could just be used out of the box SAP products and things like that, and then just manage all of that through people and culture change entirely? Or is there always going to be a 20-30% that requires that specific modification to the business?
It's a great question. I think I was brought up years ago with software. It was all around, you do your business process, you decide what your processes are, and then you sculpt the software around that, and then it's all flipped on its head, especially with cloud. It's around no, that you take it out of the box, you adopt, not adapt. But then I thought that it's difficult. I think it's a balance, because I think sometimes if you very dogmatically say we will only adopt and not adapt, I think you make a rod for your own back. I think you've got to look at when you start. I think you have to look at what are we trying to achieve with this piece of software. Line that operating model a bit more closely, and not just think about the tech. Think about the benefit you want to get. And if you can achieve the majority of that benefit by adopting, not adapting, and changing culturally, then I think that's probably a good place to start. And also, it depends on the software as well. Something like an Oracle or an SAP or something, in theory, they're using sort of good practice, best practice approaches. There should only be one way to raise an invoice or to collect cash or whatever it is. So in theory, you should do that. So I'd say generally, yes, do adopt, not adapt, but 2 words of warning. One is you will have specialist processes, and you should be prepared to adapt. And sometimes that might be using something like platform as a service. or some overlay, like maybe a CRM layer over the top to make the user experience better, but not touching the underlying sort of back office. So you're not going off the upgrade path there. That could be a good bit of advice, I would say. And the other thing is, don't underestimate if you are going to. So actually, this is an interesting point. So when adopt, not adapt. Okay, so it's not adopt the technology, but then therefore the opposite is true. You don't have to adapt your business and your ways of working. So
sorry, I got a bit confused there.
No, I confuse myself almost saying it every time I say it. It's funny because everyone espouses, especially the cloud vendors, they come in and they say, you can be up and running in 3 months, you just adopt, not adapt, it's all good. Okay, so you're not adopting the software, but therefore, if you're not adapting the software, so therefore you're adapting your ways of working on your operating model. I don't think there is such a thing as adopt, not adapt. It's choosing where you're going to adapt the software for business. So there you go. A bit of an epiphany I had the other day that adopt, not adapt is a bit of a myth. It's just where you're adapting is the question.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to change. Yeah. I mean, we had to change Oracle. You don't get me Oracle NetSuite. It was tough and it was hard, but once we've adapted, and we had to adapt, and we also had to get some products on top of it. That people write. Some of these fintech companies write these products that do it, and so to make it work for us. Otherwise, it wasn't going to work for us. But if it has been, it's been great now.
Good, but there's been painful journeys. There's a fundamental problem with software selection and vendor selection in terms of how do you typically we don't really know our requirements to see some software that works, and typically we look at fit and the value proposition on paper. You've got to find that way to make it real, bring it to life.
Yeah, a quick one on procurement, Chris. And we're seeing this, when I'm saying the new and the old way of procuring, as I see it. So I'm going to talk IT now. I don't think in the last 3 or 4 years we've had a spec from a client that we have not adapted or changed, and therefore something different. Yeah, because you've not been to our office for quite a long time, but we've got written on the wall challenge, and it's in massive letters. You have to challenge a client, otherwise there's no point of us being here. Yeah, because we're seeing what's going on with, say, 40 other clients. There's loads of ways to skin this cat. And this is where sometimes we struggle with procurement. So you're with the old style of procurement or new style. So we might then work with a company and we could give them 30, 40, 50 days free consultancy. You're challenging them, you're doing workshops, you're doing this, and it is free on the back of you're going to get that order. Then it goes to procurement at the end, and they say everyone got to have price parity to the manufacturer. Right, okay, we've done 50 days work, we've made what you chose before was rubbish, and now you're going to get something that really is going to work for your business, but we're now not going to win the deal, or we're going to make 1%. That is a real challenge, because then I understand it because it's tangible. That procurement department can say, yeah, we've saved you £40,000.
I think from my example, yeah, so from a procurement cost point of view, the major issue that has traditionally happened in organisations is that procurement usually aren't engaged or bought in to the process early on. Yeah. So, there's scenarios where suppliers would reach out to the guys in the platform, have the conversation with them, and then procurement are brought in at the end of the process to do a negotiation, which by often either a deal's already done or the promises have been made, or vice versa, where it's kind of lose-lose for everyone, because if the guys on the platform aren't getting the outcome that they want, they probably run it right to the end of when the project is due to expire. So they've run out of time. The supplier's annoyed because they're probably invested and put a lot of time and effort in, and there's been no or there's kind of little or no output, or there's additional work that they've got to do on the end of it. And I think where, from my point of view and a procurement point of view, is that where it really needs to get nailed down is with procurement being involved in the process at the very start. The spec has to be written before even vendors and anything else can be fully considered. So,
or the requirement.
The one are the same to me, but what fundamentally needs to be written down is, what do you want? What do you, without thinking about what other products are, what is the business problem, right? So it could be, not strong enough support for a certain, you know, a server or something like that, or inadequate SLAs under a product. You have to think about what is the business requirement for those SLAs? What do we need? And before you even think about the market, it could be things that either aren't in the market at the moment, or we don't know what are there in the market. You have to put all that to one side and think about, what do I need for my business to run effectively, and get those written down. And then as soon as that's done, then, you know, the requirements, everything else absolutely falls into place and becomes a lot easier a process. But the amount of times that we see organizations either unable to do that because they might not have the required skills within the business, or just it's something that they haven't had the time or bandwidth to think about. All they're thinking about is, I've got a problem, I need to RFP it, and sort of bypass the kind of the fundamental stage of thinking about what exactly do I want and do I need, to start thinking about vendors and having those kind of conversations. So I think as long as that is kind of followed, then from a supplier point of view, you're engaged at the right time with the right stakeholders from the customer side. So, you know, procurement are bought in, and it might have to go for a ratification. The spec might have to go for a ratification with senior stakeholders and things like that as well. So, you know, there's a certain amount of credibility that what's going in is correct. And then also as well, there shouldn't be any ambiguity with what the customer wants. So when suppliers go in to bid for products, they know what the customer is asking for and what the customer wants. And it kind of hopefully should avoid the scenario where a customer gets back 5 different responses to what they thought was one question. And it could be a completely valid that question or that spec wasn't written out correctly. And then just by sheer interpretation or just something not being properly thought about, suppliers could be missing out on business. So that's where I see that issue being made. So I think it's absolutely vital that suppliers also have the relationship and one-to-one with the right procurement people as well, and whether that's informal conversations and things like that, because, you know, then you're able to sort of prospect and see what is actually a valid requirement and what isn't.
I think timeliness, probably the biggest thing you said there for me. Lots of great stuff there, but the timeliness, it's the same with information security. The security guys brought in right at the end. No, get them in at the start. Get procurement at the start.
Everyone gets a bit grumpy when they get brought in the last minute because they want to kick holes in it. Frankly, you make friends with the security guy. He's gonna look after you.
Bringing him in at the start, not the end.
I like the way we assume the security person's a man, by the way. That's terrible, isn't it? So you always have an image of a security guy or lady.
No, I think guy has now become sort of an asexual term. I say guys, but I have defined it when I have the meetings and send meetings. I say guys, and I have told them it doesn't mean that I'm talking to the blokes here. I'm talking to everybody. It's just a term, but you've got to define it, I think, before you start using terms like that. So David, over the knuckles,
no. I was thinking it would be gender neutral, but in my head, I had a vision of a very specific security type IT person with a ponytail and a Pantera t-shirt on. So
no, see, that's another one. Modern IT security people are innovative. It's about risk. It's about involving the business. It's about everything. It's an exciting thing, not your ponytail guy, who might well be exciting. So so we're quite there. Guys, I think we probably could talk on all evening. So if we could really, really, I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It's good. It was good to talk to people who clearly, when I first knew them, have got a lot smarter. And you've developed. You're talking top of you. You're on top of your game. That is really clear to see. You're top of the game. You know your stuff. It's not too complicated. Don't overcomplicate things. Get people involved early. Look at what the business requires and go accordingly. But utilise people that don't try and do it yourself. Talk to people around you and make it enjoyable. I love my work. I find it enjoyable. It's fun. Not everything's perfect. Don't get me right, but there we are. So, guys, thank you very much. So, if you want to join me in a little while and have a chat, and maybe even a glass, that would be good.
Don't see why not. Thanks, Pete. Cheers, Chris.
So, guys, thank you very much. Really appreciated. And until next time, everybody, and thanks for joining. Cheers then, guys.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.